Some of the brothers still in the kitchen. Okay, Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalam. Okay, brothers and sisters, we're going to carry on, inshallah. And we left off on sincerity. So what did we talk about on sincerity before we left? Can anyone remind me? Sisters, sincerity. What did we say about sincerity? Shaitan, yeah, we spoke about shaitan and how he's going to come after you. What else? What else did we say about sincerity? Anyone remember? Sincerity is important, but why? Why is sincerity important in the dawah? Yes, so, yeah, but why is it important? Why is it important to be sincere in the dawah?
Because otherwise there is no reward if you're doing for anything else.
Yeah, there's no reward, right? There's no reward if you're doing it for anything else, right? Now, when it comes to sincerity, how do you, has anyone got any sort of suggestions or views on how we can help with sincerity? Practically. What do you do when you are going to do an action and you want to be sincere? Renew your intention. Yeah, good. So, yeah, practically you sit there and you renew your intention, right? What else can you do? Make dua. Yes, very powerful, very important. Because sincerity is one of those things we can't control us. We can try to move it in the right direction, but we can never be certain that we are going to be sincere. Or that we're going to be 100% sincere or 75% sincere, whatever the case is. Right? So dua is very powerful. So when you're going to be doing dawah activities or get involved in dawah, always make dua. Ask Allah to help you. Do what you can, which is to sit down, renew your intention. Right? Now, what would that look like practically? So say you're going to go and do street dawah, right? What you can do is take 5 minutes to yourself, right? And ask yourself, why are you doing this dawah activity today? It's important. And you know, these days, we don't really sit down and take time to think about the things that we do. We're just doing. We're moving. And even in our Islam, we do the same. It's time for prayer, just pray. Stop and think about what you're doing and why you're doing it. So why am I doing the dawah today? Who am I doing the dawah for? Right? Very important questions. And when you ask yourself the questions, you will come up with the answers. Right? So be honest with yourself. Why am I doing this? Who am I doing it for? If you feel, or if you notice that your intention's a bit, I'm doing this because people are going to see, or I'm going to impress such and such person, then you have to really coach yourself through that. Okay, what does it mean to do it for someone else other than Allah? What's going to happen? Okay, they will see you, they'll get impressed, they will praise you, and then that will result in you feeling good about yourself, you getting an ego boost. Okay, that will feel good for how long? Maybe a day, couple of hours, right? Then what? Then you go search for that high again in another activity, right? So it's going to come to nothing. But if I do this for the sake of Allah, what does that mean? Right? And take yourself through these scenarios. And if I do this for the sake of Allah, sincerely, my reward is with Allah. And the prophets and all of those involved in dawah in the past were given immense amounts of reward. So therefore, my reward could be immense as well. And it will be lasting because you'll be in the hereafter. And I might even get rewarded in this life. Allah may give me good things in this life because of the things that I've been placing. Right? And it wasn't just the prophets. I mean, when you read Surah Yasin, near the middle of Surah Yasin, there's a very, very powerful story of a man. Right? The nameless man. We don't know his name. Allah doesn't mention his name. Allah tells us a story. Allah sent messengers to a nation. Allah sent 2 prophets to a nation, a community. And then He sent a 3rd messenger. So it's a very unique situation in history, guys. I want you to think about this. There is a place in history, thousands and thousands of years ago. And if you go back in time, what happened? Does the population of the world increase or decrease? Decreases. So we can assume there is a town thousands of years ago with a relatively small population of people. And to this community, Allah has sent 3 messengers at the same time. Think about that. How many messengers normally does Allah send to a community? 1. Sometimes it's been 2 at the same time, but 1 normally is the standard. But here there's 3. Very unique situation. Now, when the messengers are there, what are the messengers doing? Giving dawah, right? Allah tells us that they were calling their people. And as expected, the people were, rejecting their message and challenging them and all of this stuff. And then Allah says that there is a man, Allah mentions a man who comes rushing in from the furthest part of the town. Right? Did he have a car? Did he have any public transport, buses, trains, nothing? We don't know how long this distance was. Right? Maybe he took days to travel in. But he comes rushing in. And what does he do when he gets to these people? What does he say? Does anyone remember? Yeah. Tells his people to follow the messengers. Right? Now, question. I've got a question for you guys. Think about this. If I was to ask you, was he giving direct dawah or was he supporting the dawah? Which one would you say is more accurate? Support. There's three messengers. If there's ever a time in history where one could argue there's no need for the general person to give dawah, this was probably it. Three messengers there already. Yet he comes in and he supports the dawah. Okay? What happens next? We know the story. His people kill him. But Allah doesn't mention that they kill him. Allah doesn't tell us how they kill him. Okay? And then the next thing is he's on the other side. And what does he say when he's on the other side? Only if my people knew how my Rabb, my Lord has honored me, elevated me, given me. Right? So he gets Jannah. He gets an immense reward for this action of supporting the dawah. And remember, there's two pieces of missing information. We don't know his name and we don't know how they killed him. Allah emits this information from the Quran and it's deliberate. It's almost like Allah wants us to focus on what he did, his action, and what the results were of his action, his rewards. Right? It's like Allah telling us this, what's in a name? Normally when we introduce people or recognize people, how do we do it? This is Sheikh so-and-so, this is brother so-and-so. We tell people by name. We say, this is so-and-so, this is his name. That's how we introduce people. Allah doesn't mention his name. It's like Allah's telling us there's nothing in the name. Look at the man's action. What did he do? He came rushing in and he supported the dawah. And as a result, how they killed him, irrelevant. When he's on the other side, his reward is so immense. Think about his reward. He wanted his people to know how Allah honored him. Allah records his words in the Quran. So forget his people, the whole of humanity that reads the Quran till the day of judgment knows how Allah honored him. Look at the reward Allah gave this for supporting the dawah. Now compare this man to your situation. Okay? He gave dawah when there were how many messengers present? 1, 2, 3. You are going to give dawah when there's how many messengers present? 0. Are you going to be supporting the dawah or are you going to be giving direct dawah? Giving direct dawah. So if his reward was so great, how great would your reward be? We can't imagine. Only Allah knows. If we're sincere and we give dawah, only Allah knows how great our rewards will be. Right? And this is why sincerity is key. Don't throw that away, that immense reward, just to get an ego boost for 15 minutes, half an hour, 1 day, 2 days. It's not worth it. And to understand this, you have to sit down and take the time to think these things through. Right? And this can apply to all other aspects of our life, whenever we're doing anything. And we're seeking Allah's reward. Sit down and think about what you're doing. Why are you doing it? Who are you doing it for? Right? If there is, you feel the intentions messed up and you're doing it for other reasons, then just put them out in front of you. Okay, what am I going to get if I do it for this reason? What will I get if I do it for this reason? Right? So to spend time, take the time to think about these things. And this will really help with intention as well. Anything else you guys think could help with intention? Yep, dua. Asking for Allah's guidance. Once you've done this, then ask Allah to guide you to make you sincere in your actions. And it's always good to seek istighfar always as well. Right? At the end of your day, whenever you've done your activity, seek Allah's forgiveness. Ask Him to forgive you if you were ever insincere at any point during the dawah. Right? Because when you seek Allah's forgiveness, Allah forgives, and He will change your bad deeds into good. Right? So this is a sure way of safeguarding yourself. Seek forgiveness, make dua, lots of dua. And remember, intention isn't one of those things that you just make in the beginning of the day or once in your life before you give dawah and then you just give dawah for the next 10 years. It doesn't work like that. Intention is something that fluctuates continuously. So even say you start off with the right intention, you start doing your dawah, and halfway through the day or during the conversation, you feel like your intentions change. You're doing this for the people. You're doing this for the person. As soon as you catch yourself, renew your intention, right? So constantly stay on top of your intention. So knowledge and clarity, we've mentioned this already. Look, if we're sincere for the sake of Allah, that means we know why we're there. We're there to share the message with clarity for the sake of Allah. And what does that mean? Calling people to the oneness of Allah and His worship, right? A lot of times what you find in the dawah is we learn something, say we learn an argument, right? And we start to share that argument in a technical way with someone very simple out there, right? It's no point. If they don't understand, then you're not getting anything out. Okay, so you have to make sure you speak to people on a level they can understand, right? Because the objective is they understand who Allah is and who His messenger is. So sure, you may know some very technical arguments, some very powerful arguments with the existence of God, for example, but you won't use those with every single person out there, right? Know who you're talking to, okay? There's a very powerful saying by Ali, he said, speak to people according to their level of understanding. Do you wish that Allah and His messenger be rejected? So it's emphasizing and highlighting the point, if you know your objective, you know why you're there, you know what your reasons are, you're sincere, then really try to speak to people in a way they understand. And sometimes that means you just give up all that technical stuff. If you're talking to a professor, fine, you'll talk to him at a certain level. But if you're talking to a simple person on the street, don't use the same type of arguments and techniques. So character, we've touched upon this: kindness, be kind, be gentle, be soft in your approach, right? This is the general principle. Sure, there may be occasions, say you're in a debate, right? Or you find yourself in a situation, and there may be a place where you have to be a bit more assertive, right? But being assertive doesn't mean being rude or talking down to people, right? There's a difference between the two, right? Even in Speaker's Corner, a lot of times you see people going into the territory of being rude and speaking down to people, right? You can be assertive without speaking down to someone, right? So, but generally speaking, be gentle and kind in your approach. Assume people are ignorant. If someone comes to you in the dawah and they're very annoyed and angry and they're saying some bad things, first thing, assume they're ignorant. They don't know. They've been brainwashed. They've been listening to certain things that have given them certain opinions. If you reciprocate that anger with anger, then what's the difference between you and them? If anything, you're worse than them, because you know better. They don't know better. They're ignorant. So assume they're ignorant. Try to calm them down, right? And how do you try to calm them down? It's going to be through your demeanor as well. If you're calm, you're smiling, try to get them to sit down, let them vent, let them spill, right? And then speak to them, tell them, I can understand that you're angry, I can understand you're frustrated, but maybe you haven't understood a few things properly, so let me try to clarify those things for you. Always take the upper hand, be the bigger person in these situations. One of the best examples we're given of this in the Quran is in the story of Musa alayhi salam, when he's sent to Fir'aun, right? And the scholars have mentioned this point, it's a very powerful point, that Musa alayhi salam was one of the greatest of human beings. One of the greatest men to ever walk the face of this earth. Fir'aun arguably was one of the worst of human beings ever to have existed. Right? So Allah is sending one of the best of people to one of the worst of human beings. What is the advice that Allah gives Musa alayhi salam before he goes to Fir'aun? One of the last pieces of advice that he gives after telling him that he's going to go to Fir'aun and give him the message. Qawlan layyina. Speak to him with soft, gentle speech. Right? Just think about it. It's very profound. He's being sent to one of the worst of humanity, and Allah is telling him to speak gently and softly. Why? So that he may wake up. And this is a lesson for us, that soft, gentle speech can rub off on people. It can help us get to their hearts, as opposed to them becoming defensive. Right? So and Musa is one of the best. We're nowhere in comparison to Musa. Right? And most people out there that we're going to speak to are not going to be anywhere near as bad as Fir'aun. Right? So we have no excuse to speak to them in any bad, derogatory way, to speak down to them. Speak to them nicely and gently. Right? It's very, very important in dawah to be soft and gentle. Don't get involved in useless, insincere discussions or debates. There is a very powerful narration of the Prophet ﷺ. He said, I guarantee a house in paradise for the one who gives up insincere, useless arguments, even if he is in the right. This is a general principle. It's not to do with the da'wah, but it can also apply to the da'wah. Right? Remember, you're not there to win the debate. That's not your objective. You're there to share the message. So there's ways. If someone comes and they're in the mode of wanting to debate you or argue with you, right? There's way. When we cover the Gorab, we'll teach you how to navigate that and take them back to the basics. But if you engage that debate and you start debating back, And then it becomes about the ego and you wanting to win and overcome them. It's no longer about that. Right? So you're not there to do this. And again, it goes back to sincerity. If you're sincere, you're there for the sake of Allah, you won't get involved in that type of debate or discussion. Right? So the call, we don't need to spend too much time on this, but there's one specific thing that I want to mention, is that we're calling to Allah, but the people that are being called, people out there, one thing to keep in mind and realize is they have the fitrah too, right? Remember, when you're giving them dawah, you're not teaching them necessarily something new. You're not giving them new knowledge when you're talking about lust in particular. Remember the concept of the fitrah. The Prophet ﷺ said that every child is born upon the fitrah, but it's his parents that make him a Jew, a Christian, or a Majid, a fire worshipper. Okay? Now, what is the fitrah? Who can tell me what the fitrah is? Okay, natural disposition. So who can simplify that now?
Innate essence.
I don't know if you simplified it, but you gave us a different perspective. An innate essence of who you are. What does that mean? It's a purity, okay. What does that contain? Okay, you can say intuition, yes. Some people will say intuition, but what does it contain? Yes, there is a knowing that's placed within every human being of Allah's oneness, and that even that He deserves worship. Some of the scholars link this back to the ayah in the Quran where Allah tells us that He brought us forth from Adam, and He asked us, "Am I not your Lord?" And at that point, we testified that yes, you are. Some scholars say it was at that point that this reality was embedded within the human soul, the fitrah of the human being. So when we come into this world, every child is born upon that pure state, right? But it's his parents and by extension society which deviates the person away from this natural state. So you can say an intuition, a yearning, a knowing. There is something within human beings which recognizes that there is one God and that He deserves worship. And you can see it's human nature to worship. Everyone's worshiping something with the other. Every human being is. Right? No one's free of worship. Throughout history, people have worshipped something with the other. This modern phenomenon of atheism, you think they don't worship anything, but they worship something as well. Who knows what they worship? Themselves. Right? Because think about it, when the most extreme atheist, what would he say? He would say, I worship nothing or no one, I do what I want to do. So who is he submitting to? His own nafs, his own self. Everyone is submitting to someone or the other, something or the other. Right? It's part of your nature. So everyone has that fitrah. So when you're giving them da'wah, what you're trying to do is you're trying to awaken that fitrah within them. You're trying to connect with that. Right? Everyone will be different. Some people will be more scientifically inclined. Some people will be more emotional by their nature. So you have to try to figure out who you're speaking to and then address them specifically. Right? For example, say if you speak to someone, and we may not have the scenarios in this, but say you speak to someone and they tell you that their father passed away 2 weeks ago and they emotionally distort, and that's why they don't know about God anymore, etc. Right? With such a person, would it make sense giving them a philosophical argument for the existence of God? When you know the reason for them not believing or turning away is an emotional reason. Right? So if you want to trigger their fitrah, you have to take a different approach. As opposed to someone, say a professor at a university or a science teacher, right? With them, you take a different approach. The key is you're trying to awaken their fitrah, trigger their fitrah. You're not speaking to people that are blank slates. Okay, this concept of a blank slate is a modern concept. This idea that you're born a blank slate and then you gain knowledge through experiencing the world through your senses. This is a modern phenomenon. The reality is that we have the fitrah. There is innate knowledge there. We're trying to awaken within people. Okay, and that means that there's no one size fits all. It's good to slowly get to know the person, let them learn a bit about them, who they are, what background they come from, what they're into, and then address them specifically, inshallah. Right? It's a very, very important thing to keep in mind. So dawah downfalls, we don't need to worry about this.
Can I just add a little something?
Yeah.
It comes back to the dawah concept of when you're inviting someone to your house, you feed them the things that they like.
Yeah.
You don't feed them the stuff that you enjoy.
Yeah. Imagine they've told you they don't like something.
Yeah.
And that's the very thing you made for them. How is that going to go down? So you need to get to know the person. Everyone is different. Everyone is different. So the Go Wrap, I'm going to give you a quick overview before we go into the details. So just to summarize before we do this, what would you say? Okay, what are some of the characteristics of Dawah? Someone getting involved in Dawah. How should they be? Flexible, so they should be, to treat everyone separately. Knowledgeable, okay. Knowledge is one thing. Soft-spoken, Humble, patient, sincere. Anything else? Yeah. Hardships, patience. Empathy, very, very important. Empathy is very important, right? What's the difference between empathy and sympathy? Can someone tell me?
Feeling sorry. Empathy is understanding that you should be standing where they're standing.
Yes. Put yourself in their shoes, basically. Right? Try to do this with people. Right? Don't just feel sorry for them. Try to put yourself in their position. Right? Remember, it's not that sometimes in the dawah happens. You say you're on a dawah table and someone's walking by, right? And you go up to them and you start giving them the Go Wrap, say, for example, just textbook like we cover it today. You know, it's not the case that they just popped into existence 5 minutes ago. They've lived entire lives, right? So say there's a Christian woman that you bump into on the high street, you give a dawah, and say she doesn't agree with what you're saying initially, right? Remember, she's probably lived 60, 70 years. She's probably been told that all of her life that Jesus is her Lord. She has an emotional connection to this idea, right? Now you are challenging that very idea that she's lived by her entire life, right? So consider these things, be empathetic. I know, okay, I have to be gentle. It's going to take time. Let me just try to be soft in my approach. Don't just get offended, oh, she's not listening to me. She's not making sense to her. What's wrong with her, right? So consider these things, be empathetic towards people. Anything else? It's good. I think we've covered most of them, inshallah. What don't you want to be? How don't you want to be in the dawah? What would you say? Yeah, so have that balance, the middle ground, Don't be aggressive, Don't speak down to people. Don't say, you don't need to say bad things about their religion. You can challenge their views and ideas softly. Sometimes you don't even have to challenge their views, just give them what you have. You know, one of the sheikhs once said, it's like you have the diamond in your hand, right? You have the diamond, and they're carrying sand, right? Now, imagine and when they're in the discussion with you, they put their hand behind them with the sand in their hand, okay? Now, if you start attacking that sand, what they're going to do, they're going to clench their fist even harder, right? But if you show them the diamond and say, you can have this if you let go of the sand, they may just let go of the sand, okay? Because it's human nature. When you attack what someone has had, and especially if they have a history with that thing, that means investment, an entire lifetime worth of investment. When you attack it, they're going to become defensive, regardless of whether you're speaking the truth or not. Regardless. So sometimes it's not about attacking. In most cases, don't try to attack what they have. Give them what you have, and let them make the judgment whether what you're giving them is better or what they have is better, right? And that gives them the respect as a human being, that they are humans with intellects too. But if you attack them, human nature, they're going to become defensive. And once they become defensive, that's it. Game over. You can't get through to them, because they're going to try to defend and hold on to what they have, regardless of whether what you're saying is true or not, right? So don't be harsh, don't be aggressive, don't attack them necessarily. Okay, so the Go Wrap is an acronym, right? And we're going to cover this in detail. So the G stands for God's existence, the O stands for oneness, R stands for revelation, A stands for and, or you can say akhirah or the afterlife, and P stands for prophethood. Okay, now these are the key things you want to be talking about, the topics you want to cover when you're giving dawah. Right? These are the fundamentals. Because if you cover these in a discussion, in a dawah discussion, then at the very least you've given them the core basics. In a way, you've established hujjah, right? And they're in the position to now make an informed decision. Okay? Sometimes what happens in the dawah is someone will approach you and they'll ask you a question about fasting or about the hijab or whatever the case is, and you get into a lengthy discussion about those topics. And an hour goes by and you're still talking about that topic. Right? You get nowhere. Right? And say they leave after that and they get hit by a bus on the way home. In the grand scheme of things, have you helped them? No. Because they haven't left knowing who Allah is, knowing why they were created, knowing who the Prophet ﷺ was. They don't know any of these things still. And they spend an hour with a Muslim talking about Islam. Doesn't make sense, right? So these are the core things you need to cover with them, inshallah. So before we go into the GoRap, there are two types of initiation. There is the passive type or the active type, okay? Active type is, for example, say you're doing an exhibition, right? And you invite non-Muslims in and you're starting your discussions with them, etc. You're at our table, you're approaching people with material, handing out material, stuff like this. Passive is when someone comes to you and approaches you. And this normally happens at your workplace, schools, neighbors, etc. They ask you a question about Islam, okay? Active is very easy. You made the intention to do it, you're handing out material, you can ask questions like, do you believe in God? What's your purpose in life? We're talking about Islam today. Have you got a few minutes? You can say things like this. Be creative with it, okay? Passive is the one that's very interesting because in most cases, when someone approaches you and asks you a question about Islam, it's going to be based on a very sort of common topic, one of the top trending topics, right? The uncomfortable topics, okay? So who here has had uncomfortable questions by non-Muslims before? Okay, what was the question?
Yeah, question was related to that when people move for Hajj, they become rich.
Okay.
Yeah. The second one was while explaining that to me, we went into skill.
Muslims kill.
Yeah, the Muslims.
Oh, kill, yeah, kill, sorry. I think it's a kilo, but like, yeah. Okay, they kill, yeah.
And where I work is in there for a lot of years, and I'm just maybe a year there, less than a year. So she said it is until she met me. She started to be actually different, So
Okay, let's do this. Let's talk about uncomfortable questions. Just give me a list of uncomfortable questions you think non-Muslims can ask, or if you've heard being asked before.
Polygamy.
Will you?
Polygamy.
Polygamy. Okay, yes. So why are men in Islam allowed to marry four women? Yeah. Age of Aisha, good. What else? Why women with hijab and men don't have to cover their heads? Yeah. What else? Yeah, jihad. This thing that you guys do, your holy war, which they think that it refers to. What else? How can you make children fast? They may say, how dare you force children to fast? Right? Inheritance, yeah. Why do women get this much and why do men get this much? Yeah. LGBTQ. What else?
Inequalities, men and women, half value.
Yeah. So inequality, generally speaking. Yeah. Capital punishments. Yeah. So these are the common types of uncomfortable questions that will come up. Yeah. And trust me when I say this, if you try to answer these questions, you will get nowhere. Right? No matter how eloquent you are, you will get nowhere. If they're reasonable questions. Because if they come to you with a crazy question, yeah. Let's see if it's here. Yeah. So say they come to you with a crazy question. They're like, why do Muslims kill babies, for example? Ridiculous question, right? Something silly like this. Yeah. What do you do in that scenario? In such a scenario, you say, look, no, that's not the case, right? We don't do this. However, you may have another question. And let me give you some of the basics of Islam. Let me cover some of the basics of Islam with you first. Okay? Which will help you answer some of your reasonable questions that you may have, right? Now, if they come to you and they ask you a genuine question and they're like, oh, why do Muslim women have to cover their heads and men don't, for example, this equality, right? No matter how good of an answer you give them from an Islamic person, no matter how well you articulate it, they won't be satisfied. And the reason is because they have their own paradigm, right? It's about worldviews. From their worldview, from a secular modern worldview perspective, there's a certain concept of equality, right, that they promote. And there's issues with it, but the point is that there is a concept that they have. Now we have our own worldview as Muslims, right? Now, because they are looking at things from their worldview, no matter how well you articulate the answers, they will never appreciate. Okay? You have to get them to appreciate your perspective first. You have to take them to our foundations. Why do we believe and do what we do as Muslims in the first place? Okay? I'll give you an example. Imagine that this screen here it turns blank white, turns white for a second. Yeah, it's just pure white. Now imagine all of you guys are wearing clear glasses. Okay? what color would you see the screen? It's a white screen, you're wearing clear glasses. What color do you see? White. Now imagine I walk into the room, but I'm wearing glasses, but my glasses have red tints on them. What color do I see the screen? Red. Now you can try your level best to try and convince me that the screen is white. But because I see red, are you going to be able to convince me? No. So what do you do in that situation so I can see reality for what it is? Yeah, you encourage me to take off my glasses and put on the clear pair of glasses. Okay? This is how worldviews are. They're like lenses. Okay? They have a certain lens through which they see the world and understand the world and understand concepts and ideas. We have a lens through which we see the world and understand the world and understand ideas. Our lens is the lens of Islam. What does that mean? We know Allah exists. He is the all-knowing being, all-powerful. Therefore, whatever Allah says is true. Right? Is everyone following me so far? We believe in Allah, who is all-knowing, all-powerful, has created everything, and that means whatever Allah tells us to do is best for us. He created us. He knows us better than we know ourselves. Whatever He tells us to stay away from is best for us. Right? So therefore we rely upon Allah, we submit to Allah. And that's the most rational thing to do for a human being, once they understand who Allah is. Okay? That is our framework, that's our foundation. Now from their worldview, what do they have? They have their human subjective opinions and views, and their own concepts about equality and so on and so forth. Now how is equality from their perspective, generally speaking? Their liberal notion of equality is what? Men and women should be equal. Very blanket, generalized statement. They should do everything the same. Now there's problems with that type of concept in and of itself, right? Which then they would have to deal with. Because, well, okay, would that mean that you tell women to do certain jobs that men do? That will cause them a lot of problems and issues, right? There's many issues from their perspective, but that's their general conception. Therefore, when they look at Muslims and say women are covering their heads, men are not doing the hijab, there is an inequality based on their worldview, right? Now, no matter how well you explain what Islam says about why women cover and the wisdom behind it and all of this, they won't appreciate it. Until you give them, or till you can get them to step into your worldview. Give them your framework. If you can prove to them Allah exists, right? And then show them that this creator is all-knowing. He created human beings. Therefore, who knows best? God or the human? God knows best, right? And there's many times we think something is good for us, and Allah mentions this as well, but it's actually bad for us. And sometimes we think something is bad for us, but it's actually good for us. We just guess, make best judgment. That's what it is. But Allah knows, right? And therefore we rely upon Allah. We submit to Allah. Okay. Now, this concept, they need to appreciate this concept. So you have to give them the foundations of our Islam. Once you give them the foundations, you give them the right lenses. At the very least, they can appreciate why we do what we do, even if they don't agree with it. Okay? But if you just try to answer the questions, it's not going to go anywhere. You'll answer one question, they'll come up with another question. You give them an answer to that, they'll come up with a third question, then a fourth question, then a fifth question, you'll go nowhere. Right? You have to give them the right foundations. How do you do this now in a practical way? Okay? Say John comes to you at work and he says to you, I was watching that BBC documentary the other night, and I saw that Muslim men, they can have 4 wives and women can't. Why is that the case? Why the inequality? Okay? What do you do in this scenario? You say, John, that's a brilliant question. Thank you for coming and asking me this question. So number one, acknowledge them. Thank them for asking you the question. Okay? So John, thank you for asking me the question. That's a brilliant question. However, before I give you the answer, I'm going to take a couple of minutes and just share some of the basics of Islam with you first. Okay? Why? Because when I give you the basics of Islam, it will allow you, or give you the framework to be able to understand the answer to your question. So it's very important we talk about the foundations first, the core concepts first. So John, if you have a couple of minutes, let's sit down and let's have that discussion. Let me get you a cup of coffee and let's talk. So can you see what you've done there? You've acknowledged John, you've told him you'll give him an answer, but then you've taken control of the conversation and you're taking it to the foundations. So you're now going to make it a dawah conversation as opposed to just a back and forth discussion that goes nowhere. Okay? So I'm going to repeat it again. Right? John comes to you, he says, I was watching this program, you men, you women have to cover, wear hijab, cover their heads, cover their bodies, and you men don't have to do that. Why is that the case? So John, that's a brilliant question. Thank you for asking me the question. Thank you for approaching me. Instead of going online or whatever the case is. Thank you for coming to me. However, John, before I give you the answer to that question, let me take a few minutes and share some of the basics of Islam with you first, because they're relevant to the answer. They're connected to the answer. So let me give you a coffee. Let's sit down and let's discuss this. Okay, if John says yes, perfect, brilliant. Now he's ready to have the discussion. If he says, no, I want an answer, give me an answer right now. Say, John, I know you want an answer, but trust me, for you to understand the answer to your question, you need to understand some of the basics of Islam. So don't give in. Make them appreciate why they need to understand the basics of Islam first. And it's the truth. Like we said, once they have the right lens, the right framework, they'll be able to understand the answers to the questions that they have better. Right? So is everyone okay with that? So now with this technique, what's going to happen is it's going to make your life easier as well. Because the truth is, no one here knows the answers to every question. Right? Even if you can articulate answers to the questions they have, you're not going to get anywhere, as we've seen. Right? So you have to bring them back to the foundations. And trust me, I've seen this many times. When you then talk about the foundations of Islam, about Allah's existence, His oneness, revelation, prophethood, and then at the end, when you go back to the question, at that point, most of them, they're not really interested in it. Or they know now why we do what we do. So it's not really a question anymore. Right now, it's a question of whether they want to accept what we're saying or not accept what we're saying. Okay? So acknowledge them, thank them, then tell them, let's talk about the basics and we'll come back to your question. Right? So you're not evading the question, you're actually giving them the tools they need to be able to understand the answer to the question properly. Right? Is everyone okay with this? Any questions? It's a very important part of the course. Right? So it's about taking control of those situations. It'll give you the confidence now. You don't need to know the answers, the detailed answers to all these questions. Right? And at the end of the discussion, if they still have that question, then and you don't know the answer, say, John, please let me take your number down. I'm going to ask one of my friends or ask the Imam, whoever, and get back to you. So take the number and get back to them with the answer. Right? But in most cases, I've noticed that they're okay at that point. And if you have the answer, give them the answer at the end. But at least you've given them dawah at that point. Okay, so you've taken any situation where someone comes to you and asks you a question about Islam and you turn it into a dawah opportunity. Right?
They're not interested.
Yeah, so sometimes you'll get that. Sometimes someone will come to you, they just want to debate with you. And they don't like you saying that. They'll be like, no, give me an answer. Right? You can be a bit funny in those situations. You can say, look, John, what day of the week is it? Yes or no? Or what's your name? Yes or no? Right? So what you're trying to get across is that not every question is a yes or no answer. It requires an explanation. And again, stick to your point. So John, trust me, I know you want an answer and I'll give you an answer. I'll try to help you with that. But first, if you really are interested, I need to share some basic concepts with you, which are going to be very useful in you understanding your answer. If he's sincere and honest, he'll be okay with that. If he doesn't have the time, he'll at the very least he'll say, I don't have time right now, but here's my details, let's talk about this later. Right? But if he's insincere, just wants to debate with you, he'll just at that point just say no and just leave. And that's fine, you've saved time, you can talk to someone else instead of wasting your time. So it saves you as well, this type of method, from ending up talking to people that are not interested. Right? Any other questions related to this?
You say you're choosing to make this brand other where you are. So you are the more extreme.
Okay, so in that scenario, here's what I would do. I'd say, no, I'm not extreme, right? But it's a very good question. And I'm going to give you an answer. But before we do that, let me share some of the basic concepts of Islam, which will help you understand why I do what I do. So again, you can take that scenario and you take them to give them dawah. And then at the end, tell them, see, now you understand why we believe in God and why I wear hijab. Because God told us. God is all-knowing. Are they Muslim? Are they Muslim? Okay. So give them the dawah and then explain to them at the end that, look, just because everyone's on a different level. Some are more practicing, some are less. Everyone's on a journey and they're all on their own journeys. So we don't judge other Muslims by where they are. We pray for them and we ask Allah to guide them more. We encourage each other to do better. So just because I'm doing the hijab, I may fall short somewhere else, where the sister that doesn't do hijab is probably better than me, right? So we're all on different levels. It doesn't make one better than the other. It's just we're all on a journey towards God and we're all trying to do the most we can. That's how we see it. Right? So it's not about extreme or not extreme. It's nothing like that. Any other questions related to this concept about taking control and taking it back to the basics, the fundamentals of Islam.
We use this most times.
I would use it every single time. Whenever someone approaches you and they have a question about Islam, which is specific, take it as an opportunity to give them dawah. Tell them about Allah, tell them about His oneness, prophethood. And if all of this makes sense, at the end, they can even take shahada. Sometimes it happens. If they accept that God exists and He's one, and they accept that He created us to worship Him, and they accept the Prophet, then they're ready to take shahada, essentially. You can tell them you can become Muslim. So, and sometimes they're not ready at that point, but you give them time. You take the number and you go from there, basically, inshallah. Stay in touch with them. Okay, so skip this. Okay, so the next step now, inshallah, is you get into the Gaurav. So John has sat down with you. Okay, he's agreed to have that discussion. You bought him a nice cup of coffee. The very first thing, what do you guys think? What's the very first thing we need to do? Start talking about God's existence. Get to know Him, right? Start with questions. Very important. Get to know Him, right? Because remember, Gaurav is what? God starts with God's existence, then oneness, then revelation, then prophethood. Okay? Now, if you go straight into Gaurav when he sits down and say John is someone that already believes in God, then you're going to be wasting your time and his time, right? So get to know him first. So I would start with a question. So John, do you believe in God? Find out. There's only 3 answers. 1, yes, I do. 2, no, I don't. Or 3, I don't know. Okay? For the first one, when he says, yes, I do believe in God, you don't have to start with G. You can go to O. Okay? If he says, I don't know or no, then you start with G. Right? So at least you know now. You can ask him a few more questions about his life, get to know him a bit more if you haven't already, etc. Okay? So get to know him. What's his position? Where does he stand? If he says, no, I don't believe in God, then you can go into God's existence. Now, how would you prove God's existence? Does anyone have any arguments for God's existence? Okay.
Going back, where did that come? Where did that come?
So there has to be a starting point. Yeah. Yeah. Good. Simple. Very simple. Remember, to believe in Allah, that is the creator of the universe, it doesn't take much. It's a very simple, intuitive, rational concept. Right? It just makes sense. Right? But what other arguments would you use? Yes, brother.
I just contemplate this, probably very silly, but tell them to close your eyes and then pinch you. Then where did that come from?
Yeah.
Nothing.
Nothing.
You, wouldn't
Yeah, just say no way. It came out of nothing. Right? He used obviously they say that's
Something like
ridiculous.
that.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. So I'm going to share two quick arguments with you. One is a very simple one, and one is a bit more, not complicated, but a bit lengthy. Right? So you can choose either or depending on the person you're speaking to. Right? The simple one is a basic design argument. Okay? I'm going to give you guys a story, and I want you to tell me if what I'm saying is true or false. Okay? Before you guys came in this morning, I came in and the window was open. Now there's a plastic factory 2 miles down the road, and there's a label factory 3 miles down the road. And what happened this morning was that the conditions, the atmospheric conditions were so perfect. The wind was blowing in the right speed, at the right in the right direction. The sun was shining in the heat of the sun was hitting the earth just the right temperature. And what happened was that this caused this vortex by which this caused some plastic from the plastic factory to fly out of the factory, fly all the way across 2 miles through the window, and it caused it to start spinning in the air. The plastic started spinning in the air, and it formed into this bottle. And then a label came in flying through the window, and it wrapped itself around the bottle. And then another piece of plastic made itself into a lid, and water came down through the roof, filled the bottle, and then the lid screwed on, and the bottle landed on the table. That's how this bottle came into existence today. Who would believe me? I see some of you guys smiling and laughing. Right? Who believes me? Anyone believe me?
I've like mentioned about this, the phone in the desert.
Yeah, you can use the phone. I'm using both. You can use anything. Anything. But who believes in that story I just told you? No one. Why don't you believe me? Why doesn't it make sense? So let's really understand this. You're looking at the bottle, okay? You're listening to my story, and you're concluding that what I have said does not make sense. So what is it about the bottle that tells you my story is false? Why? What is it about the bottle that tells you it has to have a manufacturer? Specifics. Give me specifics. Design. Okay. So it contains water. It has a purpose, right? It has a certain shape. It has a certain form. Yeah. It has different parts which work together. It has a label with information. Yes, brother. Do you have some? No? So all of these things, and as humans, we quickly calculate these things in our mind. We look at an object, right? You're calculating these things in your mind, and you listen to my story, and then you come to that conclusion, no, that story is false. Looking at the bottle, looking at the fact that it has a form, a shape, a size, symmetry, purpose. No, this bottle needs a manufacturer, right? Very simple. Now, all you have to do at this point is tell them, well, look at the universe. What's more complex, the universe or the simple bottle? You need the universe and its laws for this bottle to exist. So could the universe come from nothing then, or create itself? If the bottle needs a creator, and it's so simple, then the universe, which is far more complex, must surely have a creator. Very simple logic. And you can do this with anything. You can do it with your handbag, the sisters. Say you have a handbag, you can ask them, could this bag come from nothing or make itself? They'll be like, no. Why not? Because it has a purpose, it has a shape, it has some color, it has these straps. Okay, what about the universe? The universe is far more complex than my bag, or my glasses, or my jacket. Okay? So it's a very simple logical argument. Does everyone understand it? Yeah? Any questions related to this? No? So it's a very simple argument. What we're trying to show them is that when you look at the universe and all of its complexities, and the fact that there's life within this universe and it has laws, there must be a creator. There must be a cause. It can't just come from nothing. Okay? So that's a very simple argument. The other argument you can use is found in the Quran, chapter 52, verse 35 and 36. I mentioned it earlier. Allah says, or were they created by nothing? Or were they the creators of themselves? Or did they create the heavens and the earth? And then Allah concludes by saying, but rather they are not certain, or that they don't want to be certain. Okay? Now, there are some logical possibilities here in these ayat. And the Mufassirin, the exegetes have said that these questions that Allah asks can be applied to anything that begins to exist. In other words, you can ask these questions about anything besides Allah. Okay? So what's the first thing? Or were they created by nothing? Can something come from nothing? Can the universe come from nothing? Question. Can something come from nothing? No, out of nothing, nothing comes. There has to be something. There has to be something, right? Therefore, the universe can't come from nothing. So you can cross that option out. The next thing Allah says, were they the creators of themselves? So the question here we can ask is, can the universe create itself? Can something create itself? No, why not? Why can't something create itself? Just think about that idea in your heads. Exactly. It's a paradox. Because think about this. The idea of something creating itself. Okay. Say you want to create you. Now you can only do that if you already exist to do the action of creating. But if you already exist, then you're not going to create yourself because you're already there. So it's a paradox. It doesn't make any sense. The universe could not create itself because for the universe to create itself, the universe had to already be there. But if it was already there, then it can't create itself because it's already there. So it's a paradox. It doesn't make any sense. You can cross the option out as well. And then Allah says, were they the creators of the heavens and the earth? Now there's a few ways we can look at this ayah. The first question we can ask is, can something create something that came into existence before it? Let me repeat that again. Can something create something that came into existence before it? So what came first, the universe or us? The universe. So then how can we create the universe which existed before us? You can't, right? So that's one way of looking at it. The other way is, can something created create something else? Can something created create something else? Answer is yes. So like Murtada is created, he can create a bottle. So something created can create something else. But if you go on forever, then you can ask, well, what created that thing that created the universe? Right? And then you say, okay, well, what created that thing that created that thing that created the universe? And then you go further back, well, what created that thing that created that thing that created that thing that created the universe? So this is a problem. Now you'll go on forever. And if you go on forever, it's like the chicken and egg problem. It just goes on forever. And if you go on forever, we wouldn't be here today. So there has to be a first cause, a starting point, right? And that's what we call, say, is Allah, the first cause, the one that created everything, the uncreated, right? So you can cross this option out as well. What are you left with? What's the only option you're left with? That the universe was created by an uncreated creator. It's a bit more of a lengthy one. It'll be in your notes, so you guys can cover it again, inshallah. But it's a very powerful argument that you can take from the 52nd chapter of the Quran, verses 35 and 36, inshallah. Right? Any questions in relation to these two arguments? Yeah. Yeah, so there's two ways you can answer it. The simple way of answering it is that we don't believe in a created God. They are assuming God is created. So they have to tell us, why are they assuming that in the first place? Right? That's the easy way. The other way is, like I explained, if you say our universe was created by God, and God was, who created God? Well, God 2 created God 1. Who created God 2? God 3. Then who created God 3? God 4. If you go on forever, we wouldn't be here. So there has to be a first cause that's uncaused. Right? And Allah is eternal, without beginning, without end. So that's the best explanation. Right? So there's two arguments you can use, inshallah. What I would recommend you do now, give you guys about 2 minutes. Me and Murtha are going to swap over. Murtha is going to carry on the course. But practice with the person next to you everything we've gone through. Now I'm going to summarize it quickly so you know what to cover. One of you has to act like the person asking the question about Islam, and the other one act like the one answering, and then swap over, okay? So first thing you want to do is, person that's acting like the one that's asking a question about Islam, ask the other one, okay, ask them a question about Islam, why do women cover their head, etc. The other person, you have to acknowledge first, say, thank you for asking me the question. However, for you to understand the answer, you need to understand some of the basics of Islam first. So if you have a couple of minutes, let's sit down. Do it in your own words, obviously. Get them to then start the discussion, ask them the question, do you believe in God? And then go through the argument for God's existence, inshallah. Choose one or the other. And practice, and once you've done that, swap over and let the other person do it, inshallah. This will help it stick a bit in your minds as well, inshallah. So you guys can start now. Give you about 2 minutes, inshallah. Okay.
What are you looking for? Because it's example. Yeah, these are the photos from the bottom. Do the pictures. That's oh, yeah, sure. Give me. That's 10 seconds. Sending a minute of a message. So, I'm not ignoring you. Literally not. So you're going to be the non-Muslim. Well, let me be the non-Muslim. You be the Muslim. And I say to you, okay, or ladies have to cover their hair, their heads. Why is that? That's inshallah that will last. All right. Good. So if you, I there's the information to you, and I'm giving the channel the erroneous answers on the internet information. So I don't appreciate that. Then whether you came to me, yeah. And then, however, this question has please and if you do have some time, I will like to take it out and do this so that I can give you some more information from the beginning why we why are we doing actually well action. I'm with you. Yeah, that's excellent. That's good. You put it in your own words. Everyone's teaching you don't have to use the exact words. You don't have bringing it back to Islam. Somebody might say that's an excellent question. In order to understand an answer to the question, I need to explain to you the basics of Islam. You use the key words for the basics. MashaAllah, you got it. Listening. MashaAllah, so forth. This is what it is. Instead of answering the question directly,
If you answer it and say you please them, then okay, got my answer. They'll only ask question number 2, 3, 4, up to 1,000, right? And then they'll, you've lost now track of the question, they'll go back to number 1 again. In other words, it's an infinite loop. Do you understand? Because people sometimes it's the need, the intention. We don't know why they're asking the question. Maybe they're mischievous, maybe they're trying to disprove Islam, maybe they're going to Islamophobia, baggage, the media. Million reasons why they're asking the question. Is you need to basically give effective dawah. You need to guide it along, guide them, give a call to Allah. That's the good thing about this message. Because now what you've done by bringing the basis of Islam, you're saying to them, now you've got the opportunity, the doors open, you'll be able to call Allah. That's the key thing. Rather than, you can answer this question, so that one, it's about the hijab, it's about why you got to drink alcohol, why you don't eat pork, why you can't have a girlfriend, why you don't love all this stuff, and the bad things, right? Why you can't do certain things. There's going to be this firefighting, you understand? It doesn't really give dawah, it's a call to Allah. That's the key thing. Sometimes people are confused. Sometimes they're not mischievous, they're not bad, they're genuinely lost. And they don't know why they're asking the question. It's just maybe they think it's a good question, and it gets lost in the detail. Does that make sense? So yeah, so it's a good thing to go around. And I've shared the notes with Brother Ahmed, so you can always get the note. It allows you to effectively give effective dawah. So it's a good thing. Actually, go around. It allows you to control things and call to Allah, give the message. Now we're on the G of go around, existence, right? Basically, we're going to move on to the O, oneness. Yeah, Allah is one. That's critical. Any believer, and then the revelation of Quran, then prophet. Yeah, you can make it after. You can make it after. I would make it up. I wouldn't leave it out. We essentially stick to G-O-R-E. G-O-R-E. Yeah. Most welcome to talk about heaven and hell. That's the big rule. What's heaven? It's what depending on how you put a simple. Yeah. Now you're thinking like you're thinking like a guy, how it goes, who you're engaging with. What he talks about, where he goes, what he speaks. Psychology, it's like reading the person. What he's talking about, where he's heading, what his information about Islam already is. Does he have good knowledge? Is he like is he genius? Is he genuine? Many things. Everyone will continue. Let's do an example. So, Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala Rasulullah. I think Brother Shafiq is the camera in the right direction. I don't know if it's pointing right. Just set it up. That's brilliant, yeah. And it's just going to catch up, is it?
Give it a second.
Yeah, you can move forward a little
Stand
bit.
in front.
Yeah,
Give it a little wave, and then it should connect to you. There's a bit of a time lapse.
Yes. Okay, so just quickly, brothers and sisters, you've done a little role play. That's good. You want practice. Practice is important. Practice makes perfect, inshallah. So I want 2 of you to come to the front. So my partner was excellent, the brother. I don't know where he's gone now. He's disappeared. He was here with me. He was very good. So who would like to come to the front and do a quick example of what we practiced? If you don't put your hands up, I'm going to leave on people to speak and then jump. Who said got the idea? Then you can come and you can see the role of this element. Dr. Shafiq, you can do it. So you can be any sort of role. You could be either Muslim or non-Muslim. So we'll make brother in the purple coat. We'll make it that you're the Muslim giving dawah, yeah. And Dr. Shafiq is pretending, no one's non-Muslim, no one's left Islam now, but you're pretending to be the guy that's searching into Islam and a non-Muslim, right? So let's go from the top, so you can ask a question and take it from there.
I know something about Islam, but I'm curious about one thing. Why do people go out fighting the non-Muslims and conquering their land, taking their lives?
Thank you. It's a very nice question. Company asking, very intrigued, interested in my faith, my belief, But maybe sometimes we have some misconceptions or misunderstandings, and if you don't mind, I can speak a few words, a few things about the basics of my religion, my faith. Maybe this might give you a better idea and understanding of like the basics and the foundations of my faith. Might give you a better understanding of these really hot topics we have.
Yeah, that's good. I hope people not take ages. I just hope just a few minutes.
That's fine. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So, can I ask why you asked this question? What was you really interested about that topic? Why particularly?
Just curious.
Okay, I'm going to stop you guys there because you hit the nail on the head and I don't want to prolong it. So that was fabulous. Well, let's take a seat again, inshallah. That was spot on. Exactly what we're looking for. What Brother Imran instructed, that you bring it back to the basics of Islam. Does that make sense? And that's exactly what's your name, brother? Faris. It's exactly what Faris did. Dr. Shafiq asked the question, very kind of controversial, heavy question that he asked, right? And then the brother Faris, what he did is he brought it back to the basics of Islam. So now you're not coming out of your comfort zone, you're not answering the question directly, you're not going out of your league, you may not have the knowledge, but you've got the knowledge of Islam. That's what I want to instill into you guys, everyone that's come here today. Don't feel or fear giving dawah, right? Don't think, like when we do these courses, me and Imran, I often hear the question from brothers and sisters, right? You know, I want to give dawah, but I don't have the knowledge. When I hear this every time now, I just know this is the work of shaitan. All of us in this group, maybe we're not scholars, maybe we're not even students of knowledge or anyone special, we're just common Muslims, we don't have like a lot of knowledge and stuff like that, right? However, trust me, you've got enough knowledge to give dawah. Yeah, the knowledge that you do have is a lot compared to the non-Muslim. You know how to pray, you know what Hajj is, you know what many things are. What is that miswak? How much is zakah? Okay, you can write volumes of it. And the non-Muslim, unfortunately, they live in a dark spot, right? They don't have hardly any knowledge. So you've got the knowledge. It's not that you guys don't have the knowledge. It's just having the zeal and the steps to do the dawah. That's the key thing that I want you guys to think about. Because we could go to many courses and stuff like that. And this is what I want you guys to focus on. I mean, what is the fruit of all knowledge? What's the fruit of all knowledge in Islam? What is the fruit of all knowledge? Who said that? Could someone repeat what it says? A bit louder, we can't hear you. Actions. The fruit of all knowledge in Islam is actions. So we can, like I say, we can do these dawah training courses, we can do them for months and years. If we're not going to step up and go out there and give dawah, it's pointless, right? That's what Imran was trying to highlight in the first bit of the course, the motivation, the rewards, you know, being connected to the Quran. These are fabulous things that you guys can get all the rewards. So now, what we're going to do here at the mosque, what we're essentially going to do is a couple of things, a couple of plans for Bromley, for the Emaan Centre and the community here. Number one, we're thinking about starting a street dawah team. That's the first thing, a street dawah team. Now, street dawah might not be for everyone. You have to be able to bear the weathers a little bit, stand on your feet for a long time, but it's really good form of dawah. It's very rewarded and stuff like that. So that's one plan. What I'm thinking is to help Brother Ahmed and the community at the same time. We can send around, I think Brother Ahmed, you've got like a book, a notepad. So we could send it around and just get some names of brothers that are potentially interested. This will save Brother Ahmed time in the future. You know, we're networking now, we're together. So whoever, just put your name down and your number, your name and your mobile, write in block capitals. You can just put your first name or surname as well. So your name and your mobile. If you want to give regular street dawah in Bromley, it'll be in the town centre. It will be like on a Saturday. It will be maybe a Sunday, whatever day works, whatever day fits in. iERA, our charity, will send you all the books and the materials and all that stuff. So don't worry about that. Just have the niyyah, the intention and the focus. Don't just put your name down and don't have the intention to come. The commitment, you don't have to come out every week. You might come out once a month. You might come out once every 2 months, right? And the brothers, the frequency, they'll do the dawah school once a week, once every 2 weeks, even if they do it once a month. At least in the sight of Allah, we did something in Bromley. Now, guys, we did some dawah. You know, on the day of judgment, we have a better stance before Allah, right? So that's very important. Also, we've got volunteers on our website. If you want to volunteer for our charity, there's many different roles. So there's a general, what roles are there now? I'm trying to piece them in my mind. So basically, we've got general admin. Yeah, if you could do admin work, Google Sheets, the odd phone call, new Muslim support, kind of related stuff. So there's admin. There's mentoring. You can mentor a new Muslim, teach them the basics of Islam. But with that one, I don't want to put you off, but at the moment, what it is, our flow of mentees, reverts is quite slow, and we don't have we don't want too many mentors, so I don't want to push that role too hard. The other one is street dawah. If any of you want to join me on these trips that we do, I do many trips at the weekend. I travel around, like Dr. Shafiq Mashallah volunteered, will be traveling with us, different towns and cities at the weekend. So if your weekends are free, and you can sort of make it to London, and then from London we'll go out to these street dawah campaign type things. You're welcome for that one. So you'll see level 1 outreach. Basically, go to the iERA website, look under volunteering, go to UK, and you'll be able to fill in the form. You'll know the roles and everything. So there's the volunteering there. There's the street dawah team. Put your names down, send the clipboard round. Primarily, what I would like maybe from the sisters' input is the exhibitions, the open days. That's phenomenal. As a form of dawah, that is super powerful, right? The open days. Now, iERA, we've got an exhibition. We've got the Jesus in Islam exhibition. We've got 20 banners, right? I can transport them around. I put them in the boot of my car. We go to many different mosques across the UK. We set them up. Then we have some stalls. We have the matching books, the pamphlets, a whole exhibition, open day. And that needs good input, right? And obviously, assistants can do many good things. That means you can give dawah directly, share information, share booklets, hand out a tea, coffee, help them. Maybe there's like henna for ladies and many things, things for kids, craft activities. You can hear the Quran, see the prayer being led, hear the adhan, calligraphy. It's like a fun day, basically. The more fun you make it, the more the non-Muslims get gravitated towards Islam. They're like, this is a good religion, these guys are peaceful, they gave me this. Like we did one in Wales, Milford Haven. And we've got professional calligraphers, and these guys loved it. The calligraphy of their name, Kita, written in Arabic. They were like, wow. And it's like they would go and frame it, put it on their wall, because for them it's like a novelty, a new thing, right? So these are the sort of things where you guys can put the dawah into action, right? The other thing we do in iERA, which is new Muslim support, which I mentioned, the mentoring. If any of you guys know of anyone that accepts Islam in the local area, so Bromley or in the Kent region, someone becomes a Muslim. Well, what's the next step? They need to be taught. How do you make wudu? How do you pray? What are the 5 pillars? All of this service, we offer it free of charge in iERA. All you have to do is pass over their details. We've got about 40 mentors at the moment, 40 to 50. We're growing them all the time. And then we will basically mentor them, right? We'll do it for 12 weeks initially. If they need more time, we'll do it for 24 weeks. So any shahadas, go to Brother Ahmed, meet him in the mosque, tell him that this person's become a Muslim, he's in my workplace, wherever. Can we mentor him? He's given permission, he wants mentoring. It's a free service and it works really well, right? We take them through everything, make sure they know, we teach them Surah Fatiha, the prayer, all the detailed stuff, and we do it in a timely fashion. We don't just, some people become reliant, some mentees or reverts, they just like lean on the Muslims for a long term, but we don't do that. We get them to become standing on their own 2 feet, autonomous, self-sufficient kind of approach, if that kind of makes sense. I can't really say self-sufficient, unlike self-sufficient, but they can become strong practicing Muslims, inshallah, right? So let others know as well that there will be a street dawah team in Bromley. Brother Ahmed will have more information, will lead on that. Street dawah is very good. You get a good amount of dawah, you hand out leaflets, you have a little stall, a little table. But all these plans, what I'll do, brothers, once you put your number down, if I've got permission, we'll make a WhatsApp group, right? And we'll discuss the plans on there, because I noticed the groups work really well for launching a team. It's like, you can allocate roles, you can say, okay, now you've got to do this next, because we don't want to be unfair. We don't want to leave it all on Brother Ahmed's shoulders, okay, you do everything, Brother Ahmed, find out from the council, do this, run around that. That's not the way it works. We're brothers, and we're all together, brothers and sisters. We'll cooperate, we'll help each other in the dawah and assist each other. So that's fabulous, brothers and sisters. I'm sure you're going to have really brilliant rewards. It's going to be super barakah, super blessing, right? Because obviously, as one of the brothers mentioned, we don't want to be the selfish Muslim, the selfish Muslim mindset. We keep Islam to ourselves. What's the point in that? There's so many people fall into that category, right? It's very dangerous. There's the narration of the man that was destroyed in the town because he didn't tell the people to do good. Allah sent down the angels. The angels saw the man. He was a good man. He was a pious worshipper. Then they flew back to Allah. They said, we can't destroy this town because the command came, because he's a good worshipper, an abid. And Allah said, what was the reply to the angels? Start the destruction with him. Yeah, because he never called out to them. He never said, stop your ways. Because the people were bad. that people were lying, drinking alcohol, doing fornication, stealing, doing all murder, haram things, right? And it's similar in today's world. You know, the world, I think Dr. Shafiq or someone was saying it, look at the world we live in. It's pretty much a dark place, right? There's wars, there's killing, there's oppression, there's murder, there's all these crimes, all these evils and sins, like mountains. People are just getting lost, right? So this is very important. So look, the point about so obviously, look, we can explain the design argument that God exists, the G of GoRap. It's fundamental, it's important. But what I want you guys to understand is it's about connecting with individuals. You know, Dawah, a lot of it's about psychology, meeting the person, connecting, making that link. Does that make sense, everyone? And what you'll realize with the G of GoRap, I mean, you can estimate these figures, but I would estimate, having done Dawah, I've been with iERA for nearly 14 years now, and it's like most people out there believe in the existence of God. Does that make sense, everyone? Most people in the world today believe in the existence of God, right? You've got 1.6 billion Muslims, got 2.1 billion Christians who believe in the God, right? Forget about who the God is for the moment, just think about believing in God. Atheists make up 1 billion. So still, they're a minority in the 6 or 7 billion people in the world. So 65, 70% of the people around us, at least in the UK, I would estimate about 60%, from my experience, are God believers. So you going out there and doing the GoRap and explaining God exists, most people are just going to cut to their chase and they're going to say to you, you know what, I already believe in a creator or a higher power, or God even, they'll even say God. Does that make sense, everyone? So you're not going to be going out there, learning the iERA course, trying to put it into practice. You know, that's an interesting question. Yeah, you use that approach, definitely use it, but you may skip a few letters. And he may say to you immediately, you're a Muslim, oh, I believe in a creator as well, or I believe in God, I'm a Christian. And there's no need to do the G now of the GoRap. Yeah, some people need more time and space, like an atheist or whatever, as a bit of a cliched example, but they may not believe in a God at all, and you spend a bit more on the G that you explain the design argument, nothing comes from nothing, where does the universe come from, all of that sort of stuff. But just remember, what you don't want to do, don't let people waste your time in the Dawah as well. I've noticed a lot of people that are new to Dawah, I'm not saying that any of you are, you may be pardoned, people giving Dawah for many years, but people new to Dawah, they can get sidetracked, right, whether online or offline. So for example, Christians, there's actually Christian missionary types like Jay Smith and these people that speak in Scholar, they're paid to waste your time as a da'i. So you may be doing street Dawah and Christians come over to you in maybe 3 months, they spot that you guys have started and they'll float around the area and they'll come over to you. In my humble opinion, don't give them the time of the day, because they know, they're very clever. They know that if they can divert you away from someone else that needs Dawah, then they've done their accomplishment. They've done what they need to do, basically, right? So they literally are paid good money to waste the time of the Muslims. So don't get stuck with preachers and militant people and the militant atheists, the one that's so stubborn. Give him Dawah, give him a Quran, give him a booklet, give him good manners, a good interaction, a good Dawah. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, is my point, because the reality is there's loads of people out there, Bromley, Kent, London, Manchester, all around us. There's a lot of non-Muslims that are seeking the truth of Islam. They're searching, they're researching. You'll be shocked. They're reading the Quran, some are learning Arabic. They can see through the media narratives and some of the nonsense that's going on in politics. They've got Muslim friends, they know what halal takeaway is. They've got information, they're research, they're close. They're close to accepting. They're the ones you want to focus on. Because in the hands of Allah is the guidance, but you may get a shahada from that, using more of a targeted approach. This will be big on your scales. And that's what you want. That'll give you an iman boost, that'll make you want to give more Dawah, and it'll be like a nice cycle for you, right? This is what you want to aim towards, right? So don't put your eggs in one basket. I mean, I'll give you a sort of drawn out example, with an atheist. There's a funny story. There's an atheist, he was like, he was told that if we could give you conclusive proof that God exists, something that works for you, you with me, Faris, right? Some sort of proof it works for you that God exists, would you worship him? Militant atheist. What do you think he said? What do you think his reply was? Militant atheist. Remember, atheists come in different flavors, different camps. They're not all in one jelly mold. It's like there's different grades, if you want to use that word. What do you think his reply was to this kind of situation that, we give you a conclusive proof that God exists? Would you worship him? What do you think the atheist said? No. He said a resounding no. And when he was asked the question politely, why is that? What's your reason for saying no? He said, I don't want to think or believe that there's something better out there than me. At least he was honest, number one. And number two, it goes back down to purely the age-old problem, a very dangerous thing like poison, kibr, the pride, the kibr. Same thing happened in the time of Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu with the Quraysh, the miracle with the moon split. They came, they observed it from far away on their caravans. As they came to the Prophet Muhammad on their heart, did you see this thing, this big sign? Obviously the moon splitting. They said, no, you did magic on our eyes, and kibr, any excuse to reject, right? And again, with atheists, they'll reject for different reasons. Usually with them, it's some kind of psychological reason of something that happened in their life. They lost their parents in a car crash or something like that. It's not a rational reason. There's sort of emotions to attach to it to reject God. We'll talk more about that, I think, in the course a little bit. So now I'm going to move on to. So you get an agreement. The guy agrees that God exists. Brilliant. You can now move on further in your dawah. Right? You've got an agreement. So now we're on oneness. How would you, brothers and sisters, explain about oneness, the concept of Tawheed or oneness in Islam? How would you explain to a non-Muslim? What angle would you come from? What knowledge would you bring? What do you think, guys?
It's like common sense.
Good.
Around us, we see every organization, everything is run by one.
Excellent. This is good, brother, because it links to the will, right? So like when you have a bus driver, you don't have two wheels, steering wheels, and two bus drivers, do you? You don't have two, do you? You have one bus driver, right? And if you have two, there'll be at loggerheads. CEO of the company. You don't have two CEOs. You have one CEO, one managing director of the company, right? So if you had these two theoretical gods, God A, God B, and God A wants to make it sunny, which it was, right, in Bromley, wants to make it sunny, and God B wants to make it raining tomorrow in Bromley, right? Where are we? What's this exact area called? Keaton or something, is it? Keston, that's it, right. So he wants to make that weather like that in this region, right? These two gods. So what's going to happen with these gods? Rain, sunny, what's happening? Anyone? God? What's happening with Dr. Shafiq? Yeah, specifically what's happening between the gods. Clash of wills. Key word I'm looking for is the wills, right? Because according to the Islamic definition, remember, always bring it back to Islam. Who is Allah? That's effective dawah. Learn more about Allah, learn His names and attributes. That's key in the dawah. Al-Awwalu, Al-Akhiru, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim. The more you know knowledge of Allah, the more better you become as a Muslim and the better your dawah. So the point is, God, Allah, is powerful, Al-Qadir, right? Which means that His will cannot be subdued by any other being. It can only be one. This whole thing about oneness, it's very intuitive, like Brother Dr. Shafiq was saying, it's very rational, it's common sense. Dr. Shafiq said, common sense that you can only have one true God. Even the definition when you have the names of Allah in English, be all powerful, be all loving, be all seeing, be all hearing. The THE, the definite article, indicates in the linguistic sense that He must be one. So it's very intuitive, right? So again, you've done the G, or you didn't need to do the G of GORAP. So someone agrees God exists, they're on the right page. From O, the oneness will flow quite rapidly as well. Unless you come across someone, again, a stubborn individual, a staunch Hindu, no, I believe in all these many gods of mine and this and that. Look, even with Hindus, the Hindus, they basically, the common folk, the common Hindus, a lot of them are ignorant about the teachings in their own books. That makes sense, everyone? The Vedas, Bhagavad Gita, their scriptures, their sacred texts, they're ignorant about the teachings in their own books. Because in their own books, it does talk about one God. Same with the Sikhs. It has that knowledge in there. But the common folk, they're turned to idols. The statue, Ganesh, Krishna, all these idols, these wooden and these stone idols, that's how they've started to worship the God. Do you understand, everyone? So it goes back to knowledge, right? And it's key. But what you'll find, as I kind of emphasize, oneness is very intuitive. It's very straightforward. It's very simple. Remember, you're just looking for an agreement. Someone is let's say someone is totally rejecting that God is one. Totally stubborn, can't budge in, can't shift in. What would you guys do? I indicated it earlier. What would you do? You're at a stickling point. You're stuck now. He's very stubborn. He's totally, no, God must be, there's at least 300 gods. What would you do as a da'i? What would you do to this person? Yes, Forrest.
Dr. Zaki, I make some good ones. I can relate to them. So, Dr. Zaki, I said, you've done half my job. You've already said there's no God.
Okay, but think a bit further. I mean, look, this guy's really stubborn. He doesn't even take that. He doesn't take anything. He just doesn't take it. What would you do as a guy who's really stubborn? You know, maybe he's stubborn on the God's existence. Maybe he's stubborn on the oneness. Maybe he's stubborn on the Quran. What would you do as a guy in this sort of situation? I said it earlier. I made the point earlier, just a little while ago. I made the point. What did I say? I said, yeah, exactly. Look, don't try to fit the square peg in the round hole. The guy doesn't want to know. He's stubborn. Maybe it's arrogance, maybe it's ignorance, whatever the reasons. Forget the reasons. Move on to the 101,000 other people out there that are searching for the truth. Don't waste your time. Don't think you're being a hero, speaking for 15 hours with someone that's just mischievous. He may just grind you and waste your time. It's better to be effective in your dawah. Wise. Hikmah is essential. Hikmah, putting the thing in the right place. Use wisdom, right? So I'm not saying cut him off totally and never give him dawah. I never said that. Do the right medicine, like a doctor, he gives the right medicines, doesn't he? Yeah? He gives this one, this tablet, this paracetamol, this whatever antibiotic. He gives the right medicines. Give the right medicine to the right people. With the stubborn guy, the stubborn Hindu or atheist, whatever, maybe give him a gift of the Quran. Maybe that's what's going to impact him. Maybe that's the best long-term dawah that anyone could give him. A gift of the Quran. Yeah? Because some people don't like to be preached anyway and given the message. Yeah. Many years ago, I was not practicing Islam. Yeah, I used to be a Muslim, born Muslim family. I never used to pray 5 times a day. I never used to do fasting. Well, I did keep a course version of fasting, and I became practicing due to the Quran, one verse of the Quran on a timetable. The University of Essex, almost 30 years ago. That was my trigger point that made me go from never praying 5 times a day, never practicing Islam, never learning any knowledge or doing any good things in that regard, to changing, transforming totally. We'll talk more about the Quran in a little while with the go-round, right? So this is phenomenal. Dr. Shafiq hit the nail on the head. You've got the verse in the Quran. You know, have there been other gods besides Allah in the heavens or the earth? Both realms, realities or creations, would surely have been corrupted. So glorified is Allah, Lord of the throne, far above what they claim. Imran Hussein made a really good point about this verse. This is in English. Even when we look at the Arabic's got the power. You know, the language, the Logos al-Arabiya has got the richness. And in that language, in the Quran, in the sense how it's written in the original, what you notice is, look, it says, have there been other gods besides Allah in the heavens and the earth? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in his immense perfect wisdom in the rhetoric of the Quran, he doesn't even give them the honor of being transcendent gods in his example. So they're already set to fail, if that makes sense, right? It's an example. I'm not using his rhetoric. We know there's no such other thing as other gods or true gods. I mean, even in Islam, we say there's other gods, but they're worshipped falsely. They're false gods, not true gods. Right? That's why on the day of judgment, Allah will say, bring your gods besides me, these other gods. They're all false anyway, right? Obviously, we believe in one God. So this is very good. Excellent, brothers and sisters. You're very, Marsha, answering the questions brilliantly. So oneness is very intuitive, very simple, very straightforward, right? The oneness. So you've got the G, the blue part, the God's existence. Remember what I said to you? A lot of people, especially UK, especially in other countries as well, Africa, where we do our work in iERA, Philippines, South America, some of the poorer countries, you know, they're more upon the fitrah. That's the reason why a lot of people believe in God, because of the fitrah. That's the argument. You understand? The fitrah, they're already born believing in God's existence. So you don't have to start from scratch. And even, as Imran said, in the Quran, you can count it on one hand how many verses of the proof of God's existence there actually are. It's very limited because of the signs. Allah's given signs, everything, this creation around us, many things, right? So oneness is the next one. Now there's a link between God's existence, oneness, and revelation. Revelation, primarily the Quran, because obviously there's many revelations or other revelations, the Torah, Injil, these other ones. But we focus in our dawah on the Quran because it's obviously, we know it's the timeless miracle. It's very important. So that link, the way you can sort of explain it is tell someone, you know, this thing, you say, look, God provides us physically, gives us physical things, food, water, shelter, houses, whatever we need. Emotionally, he provides for us. He gives us all these things like loved ones, parents, children, cousin, wife, family, all these loved ones, your emotional needs are met. What about your existence and spiritual needs? Surely you would provide for that as well, your purpose in life. And again, most people who you're giving dawah to, they will agree. They'll be like, of course, there must be that purpose. There must be a purpose for life. Because everyone will come up with a different purpose. I'm created for this, just to make money, just to give money, maybe charity, other reasons, whatever, be generous. But there's obviously a main one singular purpose, right, which we believe in Islam. Also, non-Muslims will ask these really big questions in life. What's happening? Where are we going? Is there life after death? Yeah. What are we, what's going on? The bigger picture, these big questions, these deep questions, non-Muslims will ask these deep questions, right? Quite often. Now, the question that comes up here very often, it's a big thing at the moment, especially with the sort of the rise of atheism. Not that we should think that it's this pervading force that's taken over the whole world. It seems to be, with a lot of things, it's like smoke and mirrors. They're making stuff out to be more powerful than they are. Like what I said to you guys, God believers are the majority, right? But the problem of evil and suffering is saying, like, it's an ancient problem. It's theodicy and philosophy. It goes back centuries. But they say, for example, okay, you're a Muslim, you believe in Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, the most merciful, and you believe in Al-Qadir, the more powerful, then why do children get cancer? Why is there earthquakes? Why is there tsunamis? Why is there, forest fires or whatever? It's evil and suffering, animals dying, people, whatever, right? Why the evil and suffering? This comes up a lot, and it's an excuse for not worshiping God. How would you guys answer that out of interest? Just out of interest. Remember, the clue is in the question. I say that to my son. He's doing his GCSE soon. I always say to him, the answer is in the question. When you sit the exam, don't start looking around, but think that the clue is in the question. So the thing they put it is that your God is the all-powerful and your God is the all-merciful, right? And then they try to say, for example, when the tsunami comes, all those people drown, where was the mercy? If he's the infinite mercy, if he's all-merciful, why didn't he show mercy in the beginning and not send a tsunami? And then if they say, or they also say, if he's the all-powerful, why doesn't he stop the tsunami last split second, just making calm water, and all the 100,000 people won't die, like the one we had about 20 years ago, whenever that tsunami took place, right? So how would you guys answer it quickly? I want to divert away from the course, but it's very topical at this time, the problem of evil and suffering.
The nature of the world.
Yeah, that's good. And you can link it to life as a test and all that sort of stuff as a Muslim. Anything else? Bringing it back to the clues in the question. So the clue is all-powerful, all-merciful. What do you think, guys? Is Allah just all-powerful and all-merciful? He's not, is he? They're trying to bring two names of Allah, two qualities, and make it a very limited God. Allah is richer than that. Allah is not just these two names and qualities, names and attributes. Allah, for example, is Al-Hakim. Al-Hakim, in Surah Qamar, verse 5, Allah talks about a hikmat al-baligha, a divine, all-encompassing wisdom, a perfect wisdom. We say that Allah's got the picture, if you like, in those colloquial terms. Allah's got the picture, we've only got the pixel. So this evil and suffering, apparent evil and suffering, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows, or sorry, we should say this, because He's got the wisdom that indicates reasons, good reasons for those apparent evil and suffering. Not that we embrace evil and suffering, but there's valid reasons for it, because they're with God, because He's perfect. Now, look, you can look at it from many different angles. Look, obviously, you may not be able to access the reasons, but we know that they are there. Remember, there's some things in life you can't see, but we know they're there. Like, can you see your mind? Can't see your mind, can you? We know it's there. Can't see Allah, we know it's there. Reality is like that. So the point is that with the tsunami, for example, right, from the Islamic perspective, if that wave comes along, the big tsunami, it kills 100,000, and say there's 50,000 Muslims, good Muslims, let's say, it's a caveat, what happens to those Muslims when they drown? They go straight to Jannah, they die the death of a shaheed, straight to Jannah. And there's many cases like this in Islam. The one who dies in a fire, the one where the building collapses on him. What we had recently, the COVID, I don't know if it's still around, but the plague, if you die from that, no scales, no day of judgment, you bypass all of this and you're instantly in paradise, right? So what they term as, see, they try to make out as well, these are like gratuitous evils from the God, and then, there's There's reasons and wisdom behind it. Does that make sense, everyone? Right? So, and the other point is God or Allah, He didn't create absolute evil. In Islam, we don't believe in absolute evil, right? It doesn't exist, absolute evil. Somebody once, when I was doing this course, they said, what about shaitan? He's absolute evil. He disbelieves. He wants you to do shirk and kufr. He's going to end up in the hellfire forever. Absolute evil. He's going to dwell there for infinity. But even in his past history, there was a time where he was a worshipper of Allah. I think the narrations say there wasn't a handspan of Jannah where he didn't do sajda, right? So this is how it exists in Islam. So you can bring this point about evil and suffering. You can bring different answers different ways. The names and attributes is quite powerful. The names of Allah, Al-Adil, the most just, that's another one, another name you can bring. That this thing looks like evil and suffering, whatever. The child's got cancer, he died at 6 years old, and this and that. It's very, we empathize, we sympathize. But how do we know that child wasn't going to grow up to be the next Adolf Hitler and kill millions in wars and oppression? And Allah took him at that point. And even when Allah took him, where did the children go? To Jannah anyway. So do you understand? When you bring the flesh to the bones and you give the content and the meat, the element, then it all makes sense, right? So this is like an excuse that people are using, the problem of evil and suffering. They try to say, because of the evil and suffering, God can't exist, can't be there. And this doesn't make sense, right, at all. So this is a big thing at this time. Obviously, you don't have to bring it in your dawah. You may have someone that you want to discuss it with. The way I like to bring it, and in my dawah, generally what I like to bring are what we term sound bites. Sound bites are short, snappy, sticky examples. Like nothing comes from nothing. When you say that to someone, they're like, okay, that makes sense. Nothing comes from nothing. Very simple and short. With the problem of evil and suffering, I like to just use a very sort of colloquial, simple sort of term. If there was no evil, you wouldn't know what good is. It summarizes it in a way where they can't come back with an argument. They're like, okay, kind of makes sense. And they come out of their bubble. Yeah. It's like, the who created God. If I was to answer that, which I did at an exhibition in Canterbury with a fire chief, right? He was like, and even before he asked the question, I said, you're just going to ask me now, who created God? And he goes, yeah, that's the question I was going to ask you. Who created God? And my reply is going to be, where in your house is the square circle? Where in your house is the square circle? So they begin to understand this is not a question that's valid. Remember what Imran was saying? The Islamic definition of God, right? You're saying, who created God? Islamically, you're saying, who created the uncreated creator? Created and uncreated, they negate each other. It's like asking nothing, zero. It's a nonsensical statement. It's not even a question. So if anyone, you can use whatever approach you want, what you deem fit with whoever you're speaking to, and whoever you interact with, and you think is going to be the most apt kind of approach or whatever. Some people they might not like that answer, where in your house is square circle, but you work people out. But it's good to get people out of their comfort zone, out of their bubble, turn the tables, so to speak, get them to think a bit wider. Okay, now it's making more sense. Because a lot of people, they carry baggage, non-Muslims, they carry what they heard on the media, what the EDL are saying, what the Islamophobe said, what this website said, what the detractors or whatever, the people that cause misinformation and disinformation about Islam, they're then carrying the baggage. Does that make sense, everyone, right? So some people are like that, but I'm trying to give you guys confidence. Most of the people you'll meet in the world of dawah, most of the people out there, most of the folk, generally speaking, the UK population, they generally tend to be quite honest, friendly, kind people, if that makes sense. The little bad apples, even like in the Muslim world, terror groups, ISIS, whatever, they're a super minority, the bad apples. Same in the dawah. Don't think it's going to be a realm of, oh my God, someone's going to argue and be mean and cruel. It's not like that at all. You meet friendly people, you make friends, you have good conversations, very interesting. It's a very rich, rewarding form of worship, right? So, just check the next slide. So basically, okay, the revelation, the Quran. So how would you explain for a non-Muslim what the Quran is? What kind of bits would you talk about? What area, what avenue would you go down? What do you think, Boris? The Quran.
Simply the speech of Allah.
Speech of Allah, brilliant. Give the definition. That's fantastic. Anything else? That's a brilliant one. Anything else? What do you think, brother? Who's my partner in the role play?
After that,
Speech of Allah. Which one?
after that speech, I think I want to bring to why the need for the revelation. Yeah, we've talked about God, talked about oneness, and then in that oneness, embedded worship.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, and then Allah not giving us to figure out how to worship Him.
That's excellent, brother. This is good. Yeah, what is the core message of the Quran? What's the core message of the Quran? We know it's got stories. We know it's got history. We know it's got many fantastic things in there. It's got miracle upon miracle, layer upon layer, meaning upon meaning, timeless miracle. It's even got palindromes. Does anyone know what palindromes are? Palindromes is if you read the word one way and backwards, it's got the same meaning. Like for example, in English, you put the word for the sentence, race car. Race car, if you read it backwards, the letters, you take each letter and you spell it backwards, it's race car again. So in the Quran, this palindrome is in the Quran, yet it's a revelation over 23 years by an unlettered prophet. In the exact spot, right location in the Quran is that palindrome amongst all the layers of miracles, a timeless miracle, right? So what our brother said, so what's the core message of the Quran? What's fundamentally, what is the Quran's core message? Good, good. What's the core message? To worship Allah. Thank you, brother. Thank you. I thought I might be amongst people that don't know what is the core message, right? That's fantastic. Of course, it's to worship Allah, isn't it? The core message is believe in and worship one God, Allah. That's the core message, worship. Ibadah, if you want to say that word, right? That's fundamental. The way I like to explain the Quran is I like to give an analogy, like a little mini role play. I like to say to like a non-Muslim, look, every time you buy a gadget, a smartphone, PC, PS5, laptop, whatever you buy, every time you buy it, you get a little booklet with it, small booklet, instruction guide. It tells you charge it like this, here's how you program it, these are the do's and don'ts, don't expose this humidity or temperature. That instruction manual is always there in the package. The Quran is an instruction manual, but for human beings, for mankind, for human folk, right? That's essentially what it is, a book of guidance. Then you can bring some details. You know, has got some do's and don'ts. Only 3% of the Quran is prohibitions, right? But there's other good things in there, many things about morals, manners, etiquette, conduct. This is very important, it makes up a bigger percentage of what the Quran is about. The core message is worship, yeah, but it's for mankind, a book of guidance for mankind. You can bring your different angles. What was an interesting little, like a little YouTube clip of this non-Muslim guy out there somewhere. I don't know, I haven't watched the clip for maybe 10 years or something, but this clip had this ordinary guy. And what he said is, I live an ordinary life, you know, I work, I've got family and kids, but there's one thing I do, and when I do it, I get peace in my life, which I cannot explain, I get it from nothing else. I go to the Quran channel in my satellite system, I go to Quran channel, it's English, I can't speak Arabic. When I listen to it, because I get peace that I cannot explain, I get from nothing else in my life. He confessed it all. He was telling the whole story on the YouTube, right? And you know, he gets a feeling of peace, sakina, tranquility, and he cannot put it into words. It's the miracle of the Quran. Yeah, that you don't even have to understand, it has an effect, right? So this is super powerful. So my point about revelation of R of the Go-Ra is that basically just bring the Quran as much as you can in your dawah. Does that make sense, everyone? Bring the Quran as much as you can, whether that means reciting it, you know, to someone, Surah Ikhlas, and you can maybe explain the English, say He is Allah the One, the Absolute, the Eternal, He doesn't forget, nor was He forgotten, and there's nothing like unto Him. But bring the Arabic as well. Like I said, the Arabic has a phenomenal impact, massive impact, because of that. You know, the Fitra, again, you know, in Surah, which one is it? Surah, where Allah says, Nurun ala Nur, Surah Nur, yeah? Nurun ala Nur, that first Nur is the revelation. Nurun ala Nur, it impacts the Fitra, it unclouds the Fitra, it brings people closer to Allah. That's the power of the Quran, right? So what you want to do is bring solid copies as well, you know, printed copies of the English translated meanings. That's not, fundamentally, that's not the real Quran. The Quran is the Mus'haf in Arabic, but even the English translated meanings will have a massive impact. And that's the next best thing. If an English person here in Bromley speaks English, you're not going to give them the Arabic Quran. It won't have the effect, apart from the beauty of the writing, but the English translated meanings, it's very powerful, is what I'm saying. It's not the Quran, it's super powerful, right? So give out Qurans, share the Quran, play the Quran, maybe at the speaker table, you might have a small speaker box. Obviously, you don't want to do it blaringly loud, but you can have a bit of Quran playing there in the background, people can hear it, they come over to the table. You sometimes have a Quran booth, that's quite good as well. rather than just a standard table, like the guys at Leicester Square, they have a little small booth with free Quran written. Non-Muslims come over in droves, because it's Leicester Square. In London, it's a tourist spot. People come from all over the world, they have different languages of Quran ready, and this works really well in terms of distributing of Quran, right? And you'll think of other ways of, sharing the Quran and the message, many other ways. You can talk about many things. In the slides here, we know the Quran is preserved. Yeah, no one can imitate the Quran. Yeah, there's a verse that produce a chapter like it. Nobody's been able to do that ever. Produce a verse like it. Clear message of who God is, universal message, it applies to all people everywhere. The person in the Amazon rainforest, the modern day person, if you like, they're living in today's day and age in first world Canada, wherever it is, it applies to the world. And this is the miracle of the Quran, unchanged. 10 million people have memorized it. No one produced a chapter like it. Now, there was this website, again, maybe about 10 years ago, there's a website, it was called Produce a Chapter Like It. There's a bunch of non-Muslims that tried to say, we've broken the challenge, that we've produced a chapter like it. So they called Produce a Chapter Like It, right? And all they essentially done was cut and paste. They looked at Surah Baqarah a little bit, they looked at Surah Yasin a little bit here and there, and they cut and paste what you effectively is a mess, right? But they were using the Quran. They had to use the actual Quran, right, to try to say we've done it, we've produced a chapter like it. Now, for me, non-Arab speaking person, I went to their website and I read what was their so-called Arabic Quran. And when I read it, I didn't get the same feeling I get when I read the real Quran. You can't explain that feeling. Your iman is increasing, 10 rewards for each letter, that reading, that flow that you're in, you get this fantastic reward, you get closer to Allah. And you get that special feeling, this is the Quran. When I read it, it's flow like the Quran. Obviously, the rhythmic patterns and the intricate nature of the miracle wasn't in there, embedded, right? So this is very important, right? Obviously with the Quran, in Arabic there's 14 rhythmical patterns in the language. Some of it's poetry style, some of it's prose. All Arabic script falls into one of the 14, either poetry or prose. Like a newspaper in Arabic will be prose, right? Some sort of poem, maybe poetry. But you can categorize them all. When it comes to the Quran, they can't categorize it in any of these 14 forms that exist. No one's been able to do it. There's no blueprint in the Quran. It's a miracle. It goes out of all it's the exception to the rule when it comes to language. So linguists, poets, grammar, people that study grammar, all these experts, they cannot categorize it. So it's a miracle. This is fabulous. So obviously Quran has a huge impact. So many non-Muslims have come to Islam just by studying the Quran, just by reading the Quran, just by listening to the Quran. And just, it's fantastic, right? So obviously don't hold back. We've got many of our Dawah books have got small snippets of the Quran in there, little verses and in English. So it's really impactful, right? Now, prophethood, what would you talk about when it comes to prophethood? The prophets. What would you talk about there in terms of prophets? What about brother Bangladesh? You're from Bangladesh, yeah? Brother, what do you think about the prophets? What would you say to a non-Muslim? Can be anything. Excellent. Every nation will send a messenger. Brilliant. Fantastic. Right? Anything else? Which one, sorry? Best of human beings, best of examples, very important. Excellent. Yeah. Role models, best of humans. Anyone else? Good. That's the one I was kind of heading towards. So what I like to say is many prophets, but one message. Say one unified message. So many prophets, one message. What was that message? Worship the one true God alone. This puts it in the right light, like the sister saying about Christianity, Judaism, the past history. It gives them the right perspective, and they realize, okay, so even from the time of Adam, it's only been one real sort of religion, if that makes sense, and they incline towards that, right? Specifically, obviously, we can talk a lot about Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. We can speak, for hours and hours, many things about his life, but it kind of falls down to these kind of basic three, sort of like, what do you say they are, like possibilities or configurations. Either he was lying, or he was deluded, or he was truthful. Now, why could he not be a liar? Why can we say, with confidence that he was not a liar? Don't say that again. Yeah, that's linked to it as well. Yeah, that's good. And embedded in there, what do we know about it?
Even his enemies, used to say he's Sadiq.
Perfect. Sadiq al-Amin.
Why?
Exactly. So what it is, we have to understand who he is and the sort of like the corpus of knowledge around him, like the hadith, effectively. He's the most documented man in history, as far as I know, before the internet was invented and all that stuff. The documentation, the hadith chain of narration. The science of hadith. It's very comprehensive. It talks about how he slept, how he walked, what he said, what he didn't say, his whole life in detail, right? So it's very comprehensive, and there's no indication that he ever lied. We even came close to saying a lie. So we know his character was not of a liar, right? So that's one major evidence, right? And people lie for like reasons, either to protect themselves or gain something. What was he? He actually undertook harm, afflictions. People attacked him, right? So it's not the profile of a liar at all, right? Could he have been deluded? That is speaking falsehood, thinking it's true. Speak falsehood, but you think it's true. Our brother there made the right statement about, what the message that he brought, right? I think when you mentioned Quran or one of the brothers here, to talk about, the message was a positive message, right? If it was delusionary, then the Quran would be full of contradictions and mistakes, right? And it's not at all. So that's very important, right? So he couldn't be deluded, but what's another evidence that he couldn't be deluded? Or another, what do we have? What's very important or linked to Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, something that's special to him, and that proves that he couldn't have been deluded. Somebody was saying something? It was a literal, yeah, but what kind of is a miracle? What were these, there a specific type of miracle that came to him? And they proved that he couldn't be deluded, speaking falsehood. That's the key thing. Delusional is the falsehood. It's to do with the future. What did he do? Prophecies. Excellent, Brother Forrest. Prophecies. So prophecies, there was many of them. And for example, one of them only is the tall buildings. Like the Jeddah Towers being built in Saudi now is going up to nearly 1 kilometer, or will be 1 kilometer tall. In Dubai, they put the Burj Khalifa, 828 meters tall. The hadith talked about the barefooted, the prophecy, the barefooted, unclothed Bedouins competing in the construction of tall buildings. So that's exactly what's come to pass. We know with current knowledge, current history, that's exactly what happened maybe 50 years ago, in the 60s or 70s. In those regions, they were literally like that, barefooted, eating simple things, living in tents, mode of transport, camel, Bedouins. That's what they were, Bedouins, not city dwellers, Bedouins. And then suddenly the black gold came, oil, and the buildings shot in the sky, bigger than mountains, right? What's interesting, at the time of Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the people would actually build, does anyone know how they would build their dwellings? Instead of going up, they would actually go down underground, dig down, because it was cooler. So when this prophecy came, it was like real big revelation, mind-blowing. It's like they're going to build taller than mountains. These Bedouins that build into the floor, into basements, because of the sun where it's cooler. This was mind-blowing. And now it's come true to pass. And many prophets are coming true, different ones. There's different ones, we can't get into them all now. But these are the realities. So how can he be deluded if his prophecies came true? Delusional, there'll be mistakes immediately, right? So he couldn't be a liar, he couldn't be deluded, he could only be truthful. Now we've got about 5 minutes before Adhan, I think time, or Maghrib, sorry. So maybe 3 to 5 minutes. So I'm going to wind it down for this section. We'll pray Maghrib around about 4:30, I think it is, and then we will. I'll finish up with a little bit of new Muslim Shahada stage. What you do with new Muslims. I've kind of covered it earlier with our mentoring system, but I'll give a few pointers, a very short 5-10 minutes, and look to end quite soon after that. Brother Shafiq, how long do we have until the Adhan, brother? 5 minutes. 4 minutes. In 4 minutes, I'm going to do a social, what do you call those things? Not social media. Thought experiment. 4-minute thought experiment. Let's see if I can squeeze it in. It's to do with this liar, truthful, deluded. When people try to say he was a liar, I'm also a liar, and I meant that statement. Now, if I say to you guys, give me evidence or proof that your mother is your mother. I want full evidence, proof that your mother is your mother. You'll only come up with about 7 or 8. This thought experiment's been done at academic levels many times in the past at universities. our ex-CEO, Brother Hamza Zorsi, did it with many of his peers or the professors, etc. There's a maximum ceiling of about 7 to 8 proofs that your mother is your mother. So Dr. Shafiq, give me a proof that your mother is your mother. Like I say, 7 or 8 is the maximum that they come up with. Not you giving all 7, but you guys.
Because
Which one, sorry, sister? I wouldn't really say that's a proof because you could have a cousin that cares for you or a grandfather that cares for you. It's not really an actual proof. I mean, there's many of them. Well, not many, there's only 6 or 7, 8. One of them could be the birth certificate. That's proof that's my mother, my mother. Maybe your father told you, the doctor told you. Yeah, DNA test, another one. Do the experimental DNA test. Video evidence, maybe being born. You know, there's a proof your mother, that's your mother. You came out of your mother. What other ones are there? There could be. There's about 7 or 8. I can't remember them all now. I'm hoping you guys will come up with them. But there's a few. Whatever they are, these evidences, they all come down to one form of knowledge. All of them. It's called. Does anyone know what it is? That form of knowledge. It's where we get 99% of our knowledge from. It's called testimony. Testimony, whether it's oral or written. But the birth certificate is written testimony. Your father told you, that's your mother. That's oral testimony. All of it comes down to testimony. None of it is non-testimonial, right? Even the video evidence, someone has to tell you that baby being born on that video clip, yeah? Even though it's very far-fetched, because that baby coming out, covered in blood, crying and screaming, then it becomes the grown-up big man, you know? It becomes the big grown-up brother with the thobe and the long beard, whatever, right? This is nice, far-fetched, right? But it is testimonial, right? My point is the testimonial evidence we have for your mother is your mother, 7 or 8 different forms is the maximum ceiling, is of such a weight. The testimonial evidence that Prophet Muhammad was a true messenger is massively more weighted because of the science of hadith, the testimonial weight is much more because the people in the isnad, you know, the narrator and everything, they checked on their memory. They discussed anything about them. Was he forgetful in writing and oral transmission? Did he do certain sins? Was he known to be truthful? So robust, yeah, that if you're going to reject Prophet Muhammad as a true prophet, due to testimony, where we get 99% of our knowledge, you have to by default reject your mother is your mother. You have to reject your mother first over Prophet Muhammad. You have to do that because it's less evidence compared to what the evidence of testimony for Prophet Muhammad, right? And this worked with someone actually, a Greek student at university. We did the experiment where the dawah was given, and he believed in everything but not Prophet Muhammad, and he was very close to his mother. When this thing was put to him, he came over and accepted Islam when he understood how the testimony works, the evidence, right? So I think we'll end there because maybe some people need to make wudu, get ready for salah. Let's be focused. We'll pray Maghrib, time for sunnah, and then we'll look to wind up by about half an hour after maximum after Maghrib, 20 minutes. We'll finish for the day. And that's it for now. Jazakallah khairan.